I always believed that when you're about to marry someone, there's this unexplainable joy that fills every corner of your body. That butterflies in your stomach kind of feeling that girls dream about. That was the image I had built in my head since I was 13, fantasizing about walking down the aisle with the love of my life waiting for me at the altar. But nothing prepares you for the moment when that image shatters right in front of your eyes. It all started the morning of my wedding. I was sitting in the bridal suite, surrounded by my bridesmaids, with my hair half done and mascara already threatening to run. My maid of honor, Samantha, was bustling around, making sure my dress was steamed, my bouquet was on standby, and that everyone knew their roles for the ceremony. She had been my best friend since high school. The kind of friend who knew every embarrassing story about me, who stayed up crying with me after breakups, who toasted with me after every little promotion at work. And today, she was standing right beside me, helping me get ready to marry Daniel. Daniel, the man I thought was my soulmate. Everything felt like a blur. The photographer clicking away, the makeup artist touching up my lips, and the distant sound of guests arriving outside. But something inside me didn't feel right. It wasn't nerves. I knew what wedding jitters felt like. This was different. It was a cold, sinking feeling in my stomach, like something was about to go terribly wrong. I tried to shake it off. Samantha, can you go check if Daniel's ready? Make sure he's not freaking out, I laughed nervously, trying to distract myself. She smiled. Of course. Don't worry, he's probably just pacing like he always does before big events. I nodded. Deep breath in, deep breath out. 15 minutes later, she wasn't back. I asked one of the bridesmaids to go find her. No worries, my friend Emily said, I'm sure she's just making sure everything's perfect. But as time passed, I felt more and more uneasy. So I decided to go myself. I slipped off my heels, pulled my dress up slightly to keep from tripping, and made my way quietly toward the side hallway that led to the groom's suite. That's when I heard voices. Low, rushed, intimate. My heart started pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I moved closer, peeking around the corner, and there they were. Daniel and Samantha. Locked in a kiss so passionate and desperate it looked like a scene out of a movie. I froze. Time literally stopped. My hands trembled. My throat tightened. I opened my mouth to say something but nothing came out. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Was this real? Was I dreaming? Was this some sort of sick joke? But no, it was real. His hands were in her hair. Her arms wrapped around his neck. Their faces so close, so familiar with each other, it made me physically sick. And then, they both pulled back, laughing softly. Like this was normal. Like they had done this before, many times. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over my dress. That sound must have alerted them because Samantha suddenly turned and caught sight of me. Her face drained of color. Daniel spun around, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. Wait. It's not what it looks like, he called out. Not what it looked like? Really? I didn't even wait for another word. I turned and ran back toward the main hall. My heart was racing so fast I felt like I couldn't breathe. The guests were already seated. The music was playing softly, signaling that the ceremony was about to start. But I wasn't going to walk down that aisle. Not like this. I stormed toward the DJ booth, grabbed the microphone with shaking hands, and without even thinking twice, I spoke. My voice echoed through the speakers, loud enough for every single guest to hear. Before we start this beautiful ceremony, I just want to let you all know, the groom and my maid of honor were just making out backstage. gasps, murmurs. Some people laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. But when I threw the bouquet to the ground and stormed out of the venue, everyone knew this wasn't a joke. And that was just chapter 1 of my nightmare. I didn't know where I was going when I left the venue. I just kept walking. Past the parking lot, down the street, still in my half-finished wedding hair and a white silk robe that barely covered my legs. The summer air felt suffocating. My phone buzzed in my hand, dozens of missed calls and texts coming in by the second. Most from unknown numbers. Some from guests. A few from Daniel. And then Samantha. I didn't open any of them. I found a small park a few blocks away and sat on a bench, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would rip out of my chest. The adrenaline started wearing off and the reality hit me like a truck. This was supposed to be my wedding day. I should be dancing by now, drinking champagne, laughing with family. Instead, I was sitting here, mascara running down my cheeks, with my entire life in shambles. After a while, I finally unlocked my phone. Notifications flooded my screen. What's happening? Is this for real? Call me now. Do you want me to come get you? And then, a text from my cousin Rachel. Just 4 words. You need to see this. I blinked, confused. Before I could reply, another text popped up. Check your Instagram DMs. Right now. With shaky fingers, I opened the app. And there it was. A thread of screenshots she had taken from Samantha's private story. A story I was obviously blocked from seeing. My stomach turned as I started scrolling. There they were, blurry selfies of Daniel and Samantha, late at night, sitting way too close on someone's couch. A caption, when he says he'll leave her soon, but you're still waiting, smirking face. Another screenshot. Samantha texting someone. This weekend is going to be interesting. Smiling face with horns. Then, the worst one. A hotel confirmation email. For 2 guests. Under Daniel's name. The night before my rehearsal dinner. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But it didn't stop there. Rachel sent another batch of screenshots, this time actual messages Samantha had sent to another friend of ours. Honestly, I almost feel bad for her. But not enough to stop. She's going to make such a cute ex-bride. Can't wait to see her face when she finds out. Every word felt like another punch to my chest. My vision blurred with tears. I dropped my phone on the bench and buried my face in my hands, letting the sobs finally come out. How long had this been going on? Had every late-night phone call, every sudden work emergency Daniel claimed to have, been an excuse to be with her? And how many times had Samantha stood next to me, smiling, laughing, while stabbing me in the back? I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? At some point, Rachel found me. She had driven around the area, guessing I wouldn't have gone far. She sat next to me on the bench and didn't say a word. Just wrapped her arms around me while I cried into her shoulder. Finally, when I could breathe again, she said, "You don't deserve this." Not from him, and definitely not from her. I nodded, wiping my face with trembling hands. "I'm going back," I whispered. Rachel blinked. "To the venue?" I shook my head. "To my apartment." I stood up, determination burning in my chest for the first time since this whole nightmare started. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But one thing was clear. They weren't getting away with this. Not quietly. Not easily. And definitely not today. Back at my apartment, I sat on the floor in front of my closet, still wearing that stupid silk robe. My dress hung untouched on the door, a painful reminder of what the day was supposed to be. The clock on the wall said 3 a.m., but sleep was the last thing on my mind. I spread the printed screenshots across the carpet like crime scene evidence. Messages. Photos. Hotel confirmations. All of it. I stared at them, reading the same hateful words over and over until they burned into my brain. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them kissing. I needed to do something. Not just for me, but for every guest who came to celebrate a love that was a lie. At first, I considered disappearing. Blocking them both. Letting them face the awkward questions from family and friends on their own. But then, a small, cold part of me whispered, "No. They need to feel what I'm feeling." I grabbed my phone and started making calls. First, to my cousin Rachel. "Can you come over?" I asked. She arrived 20 minutes later with 2 coffees and a stack of printer paper. No questions asked. Next, I called the hotel where Daniel had booked the room with Samantha. I explained who I was, what had happened, and politely requested a confirmation email with the booking details, just in case anyone dared to call me a liar later. The woman on the phone hesitated for a second but then said, "Honestly, I'd want the same thing if I were you." A few minutes later, the email popped up in my inbox. There it was. Black and white. Daniel's full name. 2 guests. 1 king bed. The night before my rehearsal dinner. I printed it instantly. Then, I called our wedding photographer. "I need every single candid shot from yesterday," I said. Silence on the other end. "Everything okay?" she asked cautiously. I let out a dry laugh. "Let's just say I need visual evidence to go with my written proof." By the time the sun came up, my living room looked like the headquarters of a detective agency. Papers everywhere. Markers. Sticky notes. Rachel sat cross-legged on the couch, flipping through the stack of photos the photographer had emailed me overnight. "Here," she said, pointing at one picture. Daniel and Samantha. Standing way too close behind the venue. Laughing. His hand barely grazing her waist. Subtle, but now obvious. Another shot, Daniel looking down at his phone with a grin, at the exact time he was texting her things like, "I miss you already." I took a deep breath. "What's the plan?" Rachel asked. I smiled. For the first time in hours, it wasn't a bitter smile. They're having the post-wedding brunch today. Family, close friends, basically all the same people who were at the ceremony. Rachel's eyes widened. "You're going?" I nodded. "And I'm not going empty-handed." I gathered all the papers, clipped them into tidy little packets, and placed them in a large envelope. "I'm done crying," I said quietly. "It's their turn now." Rachel grinned, standing up. "Do you want me to drive you?" I shook my head. "No. I need to do this alone." I changed into a simple black dress, tied my hair back, and put on the same lipstick I was supposed to wear for my wedding photos. One last glance in the mirror. No more shaky hands. No more tears. Just me, and the truth. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the venue. By the time I arrived, guests were already gathering in the dining room for brunch. Laughter floated through the air, plates clinking, mimosas being poured. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't destroyed me less than 24 hours ago. But that was about to change. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on the envelope, and walked inside. The second I stepped into the venue, every conversation stopped. It was like someone had hit a mute button. I could feel every single eye turn toward me. Some people looked surprised. Others, embarrassed. A few couldn't even meet my gaze. I scanned the room quickly. There, near the front table, Daniel and Samantha, sitting side by side like nothing had happened. Plates full of untouched food. Both pretending to laugh at something one of his cousins had just said. I walked slowly toward the center of the room. Some guests stood up. Others stayed frozen, unsure of what to do. I placed my large envelope right on the gift table. And then, I grabbed an empty champagne glass and gently tapped it with a knife. Ding. 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 The room fell into complete silence. I took a deep breath, holding back every tear that wanted to escape. "Good morning, everyone," I started, my voice steady but loud enough to reach every corner of the hall. I know this wasn't part of the scheduled programming, but, since so many of you came all this way to celebrate love and honesty, I thought it's only fair that I share a little truth of my own. A few people exchanged nervous glances. Daniel's face turned pale. Samantha's fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto her plate. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the first batch of papers. "I know yesterday was eventful," I said with a bitter smile. "But for those of you who missed the private show backstage before the ceremony, here's a little highlight reel." I walked from table to table, placing copies of the screenshots in front of people. The messages. The hotel booking. The private photos. Some guests gasped. Others covered their mouths in shock. I watched as one of Daniel's aunts actually stood up and walked straight out of the room, shaking her head in disbelief. Daniel finally stood up. "Stop. This is insane," he yelled, his voice cracking. I turned toward him, raising my voice just enough. "Oh, it's insane?" I said, holding up one of the photos for everyone to see. "Tell me, Daniel, is this you? At the Marriott? With Samantha? The night before our rehearsal dinner?" A murmur swept through the crowd. His father stood up now, walking slowly toward him. "You've embarrassed this entire family," Mr. Thompson said coldly. Samantha, now shaking, tried to defend herself. "This is a private matter. You can't just—" I cut her off. "Oh, but you made it public the second you decided to kiss my fiancé, in the middle of our wedding venue, minutes before the ceremony." More guests pulled out their phones, scrolling through the screenshots I had just handed them. A few were already texting. One of Daniel's college friends was filming. I walked over to their table, looked both of them in the eyes, and placed the remaining stack of proof directly between their plates. "For the record," I said, my voice low but clear, "I don't want apologies. I don't want explanations. I want you both to know that this is the last time you'll ever see me cry over either of you." I turned on my heel and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Daniel shouting something, but I didn't care enough to listen. Guests were already standing, grabbing their things. Some were following me out. Others stayed, whispering furiously among themselves. As I walked outside, Rachel was waiting by her car, tears in her eyes, but this time, happy ones. "Proud of you," she said, pulling me into a hug. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt something close to peace. I had taken back control. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of something stronger. Me, finally standing up for myself. I spent the rest of the day at Rachel's apartment. We sat on her living room floor, surrounded by empty takeout containers and half-drunk bottles of soda, replaying everything that had happened at the brunch. Every word I had said. Every reaction I had triggered. Every face that had turned pale as the truth unraveled. Part of me still couldn't believe I had done it. I had always been the quiet one. The people pleaser. The one who avoided confrontation at all costs. But today, I had stood in front of over 50 people and burned every lie to the ground. And it felt liberating. My phone vibrated nonstop for hours. Missed calls from Daniel. Dozens of texts from mutual friends. Even a few from people I barely knew who had been at the brunch. Some were supportive. Proud of you. You're a legend. I wish I had your courage. Others, not so much. Maybe you should have handled this privately. Do you really want to be remembered for this? You embarrassed him. I ignored them all. For once, I didn't care what anyone thought. Late that night, I logged into my social media accounts and did something I should have done weeks ago. I blocked Daniel. I blocked Samantha. I deleted every photo, every memory, every caption that had once made me smile but now felt like poison. And then, I crafted one final post. It was simple. A photo of my left hand resting on my lap. No engagement ring. Just bare skin and chipped nail polish. The caption read, "Better no ring than a lifetime of lies." Within minutes, the likes and comments started flooding in. People I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. You did the right thing. He never deserved you. You're stronger than you think. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. Not for revenge. For closure. I wanted my deposits back. I wanted to make sure Daniel didn't leave me with any of the wedding expenses. And I wanted to explore if there were any legal grounds for emotional damages. When I sat down across from the lawyer and explained everything, she listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, she smiled slightly and said, "You know, most women who come to me after something like this, they're still apologizing for causing a scene. You sound like someone ready to move on." I left her office feeling lighter. That weekend, I went back to the venue one last time. Not for Daniel. Not for Samantha. For me. I stood outside the entrance where I had first seen them kiss. The air felt different now. Less heavy. Like the ghosts of that moment had finally let me go. I took a deep breath and smiled, for real this time. Life was going to be messy for a while. Friends would pick sides. Gossip would circulate. Family gatherings would feel awkward. But deep down, I knew I had done what I needed to do. I had stood up. I had spoken out. I had chosen myself. And in the end, that silence, after the storm, was the loudest kind of freedom. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart? Tell me, what would you have done if you caught your fiancé with your best friend, minutes before your wedding? Drop your story or your advice in the comments, because honestly, I'm still wondering if I went too far, or if I didn't go far enough.